This episode is part of Glendale Library Arts and Cultures and the Southern California Library Cooperative's Be the Change series, which focuses on inclusion, diversity, equity, anti-racism.
Be the Change events will build collective understanding of systemic racism, elevate the voices and stories of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and inspire our community to be the change.
Hi everyone, it's Melissa.
And Desiree.
Welcome to another episode of G.E.N Talks, where the goal is to empower the youth of Glendale and connect youth to community resources, individuals, and organizations through interviews and discussions.
Today's special guest is Vanessa Flores. Vanessa is an illustrator and author raised on Plataneros and old school salsa. She is currently working on her graphic novel debut, Mori Vivi, and is the illustrator of the middle school book duology Eat Bugs, the early chapter book series Twins vs. Triplets, and a contributing illustrator for the anthology In the Spirit of a Dream. Vanessa is a proud part of the diverse art and Latina community in Orlando, Florida, as well as a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators and the Orlando Giant Illustrator Collective.
But before we start, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at MyGlendaleLAC, and follow us on Spotify and Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Glendale Library Arts and Culture, where we post full episodes every Friday at 4:30 p.m. Thank you, Vanessa, for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. We have a lot to discuss.
Thank you for having me.
So to start off the interview, can you tell us how graphic design and art in general came into your life?
Sure. I always loved to draw. As a little kid, I had a chalkboard that my parents had given me and a little etch-a-sketch that I would draw things with. I had like my sausage people phase is what I call it, where everybody's limbs look like balloons.
Yeah.
But ever since I was little, I loved to draw, and I think it wasn't until like maybe fourth grade where I submitted into like a drawing contest and I got third place, where I felt like, oh, I'm really good at this. And I also really like doing it. And I loved animated movies. I loved Disney back then. And then around 12 years old, I got into Studio Ghibli movies. And just the world of storytelling was really inspiring to me. So at first I thought I wanted to be an animator. That was a time where they were still doing traditional animation. But they were transitioning into CGI. And so I had very little knowledge on whether or not they still use traditional like hand-drawn stuff. I wasn't interested in doing computer animation. So I tried to switch gears a little bit, thinking what I could do. And then there's also the sense of like, there's very little guidance on how I could use my art in a way where I could be employed and actually like have a career with it. You know, a lot of the stuff you hear growing up is like, you're not going to make money off of art. Unfortunately, kind of reinforcing the stereotype that people don't want to pay for art. But so I thought, okay, well, I don't know how to become, because, I thought I could draw, I can make comics. I like to like make comics on my own. I like to make a lot of fan art. But I didn't really know how to make money off of that. So I kind of switched gears. I did like one of those career tests that they give you in school, and I got Illustrator. And then somewhere along that line was graphic design. And I read the description for graphic design, and I said, okay, this is something that I could do. I could get like an office job, a full-time job with, I could make a career out of. So I'll go that route. Not to say that I still didn't dream of like making art on my own. I did a lot of portraits of people, family members when I was in high school, but I still didn't really know how to employ that art in a viable career. And I wasn't really like a business person per se. So I decided to go to college for art and specialize in graphic design. I started at community college, did my fine art degree in AA, and then I transferred to UCF to specialize in graphic design. Once I got to graphic design, I felt there's this feeling that you get where you're kind of like the best artist in your school until you go to college and you meet everybody else who's also a good artist. So there was kind of a dwarf, like I felt kind of dwarfed. I think on the one hand, in my community college, which was at the time Seminole Community College, I think it was really great space for me to meet other creatives that weren't thinking of graphic design. They just loved art, and it was really inspiring to be there, and I learned a lot. But once I went into the graphic design program, I felt like almost like I wasn't enough, like my passion wasn't enough, or maybe just like I wasn't like 100% into this, but that's it. Like, this is what I'm choosing. I also felt like I didn't have a lot of guidance, and there really wasn't any illustration courses except for one digital illustration class at the time. So I kept, going on with that career. I ended up freelancing for Scholastic Book Fairs right out of college, which was probably the best introduction into what would eventually be my career now. First of all, because it's book fair, and so I'm surrounded by books, and so this kind of inkling of, like, it would be amazing to make a career out of this. It'd be amazing to illustrate children's books, but I didn't really quite know how yet. I was doing a lot of graphic design, like layout jobs, a lot of like PDF stuff and book lists and posters and things like that. So some creativity, but in a corporate environment, not all the time do you have the room to maybe grow your art in the way you want it to, because you are trying to conform to a certain look that the company's going for under certain, like, other management eyes. So in a way, I kind of felt stifled there, but then outside of that, I just kept on working on my own art, just doing anything that I like to do. And then I met another freelancer named Gladys Jose, who is another children's book illustration artist. And at the time, she was looking into doing that. And I didn't even know anything about how to get into it, but she had already done the research. So we became friends, and she introduced me to the Society of Children's Writers and Illustrators, CBWI, which is an organization that provides resources, conferences, workshops for people who are interested in getting into writing children's books, illustrating it, or doing both. And at a lot of these conferences, you meet other writers, both published and unpublished, other illustrators published and unpublished, art directors, agents, editors, and other people in the industry. And so it's a really good way of not only learning, but growing your network and community of people, if that's what you want to do. So I started going to conferences with her. I started doing workshops. She also introduced me to these like online illustration classes. It was classes a lot more about like how to draw for books, how to draw for storytelling, which is very different than just like drawing a portrait or even doing an art piece that might be like some sort of fine art piece or even a zine or anything. So I've learned a lot. I learned a lot about character design. I learned a lot about background design. I learned a lot about composing illustrations for storytelling. How do you tell a story with an illustration? And that was really instrumental in kind of like honing my portfolio outside of Scholastic Book Fairs. Is this still part of what you had asked me? I don't know.
Yes.
I feel like I'm going on for a while.
No, you're fine.
Just to kind of catch up to speed to like where I am now. I did a few portfolio reviews, and I had like comments from art directors. From one art director who kind of like, who was enthusiastic about my work, but had like some pointers. And so like, I would kind of hone my portfolio to that. And so as the years went by, I became full-time at Scholastic Book Fair. I kept working on my portfolio. And then I kind of felt like my art was improving. And I even sometimes I had like really poor feedback, like, where it felt like really dejecting and really like almost like I'd hit a wall. Other times I felt like my art was being received well. And it came to a point where it felt like it's almost like I couldn't find my place within children's books. I think I had been trying to do stuff that was more for picture books, kind of conforming my style to the feedback that I'd gotten, but at the same time, it didn't feel very fulfilling anymore. And so this was like about in 2017, I think, I decided to take a break from pursuing it. And I went back to doing art that I just wanted to do, stuff that was just at the time. That's when I was doing these little drawings of vejigantitos. Vejigantes in Puerto Rican culture are these like masked carnival figures that kind of like, it's almost like the meeting of like the Spanish carnival culture with African like mask making and the Taino indigenous roots as well. And they're really colorful and bright and fascinating. And so I proposed to myself, I'm gonna do 100 days of like just doing different designs for these vejigantitos. And then I kept doing stuff like that. I also at the time was going through like a lot of mental health stuff and emotional stuff. And I would draw what I would be feeling at the time sometimes, and I just post it. And so as I kept kind of working on these pieces, I kept doing a lot of traditional stuff, a lot of ink, a lot of watercolor and gouache. I did an Inktober where I did this whole mantra series of things that I would tell myself whenever I was coping with like a really hard time. I made these little vejigantitos, like, and so these like little color, like watercolor and ink portraits. And a lot of that stuff was getting a lot of like good attention for people. A lot of people were liking it. I ended up doing a mural on a like electric box here in Orlando that was Vegigant inspired. I did a zine workshop. And so around this time when I did the zine workshop, I started getting back into comics again. The concept of a zine to just kind of like you can kind of make it your own format. You could do whatever you want with it. It doesn't even have to be like a streamlined story, was really liberating to me at the time. And then I was also reading 2 Scott McCloud books, and it was also really fascinating to me how comics as a medium, as a visual storytelling medium, can be employed in so many different ways. You can play with like panel work and the way you design the page and everything to tell a story and to set a mood, and it kind of like flowed with what I was learning with zines. So I kept doing my art like that. I was kind of involving myself with a lot of stuff that was outside of children's books, but I didn't realize that as I was kind of like being free to create and explore without the pressure of conforming to something, that I was actually allowing my style to grow. And so through all this, I did like MegaCon, and I tabled and sold my art and everything. I kept developing my style, which involved like using ink work a lot, as well as like the use of color. So when Gladys came to me and said, listen, my agent's going to be at the next SCBWI conference, you should really go and attend. She has a workshop. I said, okay, I think it's time. I think I can do this now. So the workshop was about character design, and I'm like, okay, I've learned a lot about character design, what people want to see, so I'm gonna do this. I decided to do it digitally, but basically the way my hand and my art had developed kind of translated to digital. And when I took my homework to the conference and the agent saw it, she was really happy with it, and she had really great things to say. And so we kind of established an email correspondence, and like in the children's book world, or in like just the editing and agent world, there's this thing like where you kind of like date the agent, like to see whether or not you're a good fit, right? Because you might want them, but they may not be a good fit for you, and vice versa. Right. So you kind of date agents, and so that's basically what we're doing. We're just emailing each other back and forth. I sent her my work. She gave me her feedback, but she gave me really helpful tips on how to create a more substantial portfolio that publishing houses will like to see, or just to know kind of like the range of things I can do. So I kind of would go down the list, and I draw something, but coming from a place of my interests and my culture and stories I wanted to tell. And every time I made one, I sent it to her. We kind of like danced around with whether or not she was going to represent me. At one point, she wasn't ready to take on more clients. So I kind of accepted it at the time. But what was also happening at that time was I was becoming very unhappy in my desk job. And I made the decision that I had already been there, I think, almost 7 years. And so I said to myself, I am going to quit, if not by the end of the year, then by August. August was my date, and then if not by August, then December. No matter what happens with this, I think I'd already gone through both like an artistic and a personal growth by that time, where I felt much more confident to be able to go out into the world. I don't think I had that confidence when I first started out, and I needed to go through some things in order to kind of finally make that decision. So I made the decision to leave. I still didn't have an agent. When August came, I left. I'm like, I'm just going to keep on taking freelance jobs. I have a lot, money saved up. This will hold me over for a little bit. I'm just going to see where this goes. Like, I have faith. So I'm like, I have faith that things are going to work out no matter what. So I've lived my life in fear thus far. I'm going to take like a leap in just for my passion. As things might happen when you have faith, a month later, the agent reached out to me again and asked if she could represent me. So it was very exhilarating to receive that after taking such a terrifying but liberating step. And that was in fall of 2019, and I got my first book job I think I signed on in December or January for 8 Bugs, which was the very first book I illustrated, a middle grade book. And since then, I've worked on 8 Bugs 2, Twins versus Triplets. The first one came out. I'm still working on 3 more books. and In the Spirit of a Dream, which just came out this week on Tuesday. I was a contributing illustrator for that anthology. So that's kind of the gist of my career in 15 minutes.
But throughout that journey, I know you mentioned how you had to like kind of step back a little bit and just, you know, create on your own. And did that, taking that step back and kind of taking like quote unquote a break, did that allow you to find the love for the passion again, or to, I guess, even expand that love for your passion?
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what was happening during that time. I think I always compare it. I don't know if you guys have seen Kiki's Delivery Service.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So that movie has been my favorite movie since age 12, and it's funny that it's almost like comes into my life at different points in my life as I've like grown up, because I think I felt it at 12 in a certain way, and now I felt it again as an adult, especially considering I think I read that that movie was meant for artists. The period that she goes through where she feels like I don't have that spark anymore. I think I had like spent so much time trying to figure out what it was that other people wanted. And I still had like my style, I still have my way of doing things, but like I experimented with like not using line work at all in my illustrations, which had become like a very popular style at the time, because that was the advice of one art director. So I'm like, okay, I'll drop my lines out, you know, I'm like, okay, this looks cute. But I think like and I think I'd gotten really great at I had gotten good, like I think at the regular elements, but I still did, like when I looked at it, I felt empty. Like it just didn't, I didn't feel that connection, just like Kiki with her like flying, you know, she didn't feel that connection. So I think it was really necessary to take a step back. And then during that time, to be able to have that freedom to just create for the sense of creating again, you do fall in love with it again, because it's just you and the art. It's just you wanting to express what you want to express and enjoying the process of it, instead of trying to use it as a means of proving something to somebody. It's not that, you know, like now I'm still creating for other people. And I have said, I do admit, like I've had these past, well, it's been about 2 years now. I did go through that shift again, especially this year. I felt it again, that sense of like, I don't want to draw for myself anymore because that's all I do every day. But I think investing my time in creating for the sake of creating, in those moments is really helpful. Sometimes you do need to take a step back and just enjoy life, because that's kind of what informs, you know, you got to live your life. Otherwise, like what do you create from? So just kind of giving myself that space to like, you don't like, this is just for you. You can create just to create, just ignited that love again, and that passion. And to see, obviously, as an artist, I think we do, I say for myself, I think I do take pleasure from people like enjoying my art, right? Like, because a lot of times like we're like, oh, it's just for myself. I'm like, no, sometimes I like for people to see if like anybody responds to it. But I think like what's great is when you create something that's like from an honest space from yourself, and to see then somebody connect with that like so like deeply, that brings me a lot of joy. So that's what was happening during that period, like me just making stuff from my culture or like what I was going through, and seeing that people loved it. I'm like, oh, these are just parts of me that I'm creating that I love, because like it's me. It's really great that other people can resonate with that too.
What do you do like when you hit roadblocks with your art?
It's funny because like again, this year was a year like that. I felt like I hit a roadblock. I'm really hard on myself. I'm really perfectionist. And I think for some time, because when you're creating for books, there's a lot to do. And you have taken on so many projects. So I feel like I think when I'm working for work for myself, sometimes I spend so much time on it. And for this, like I kind of was like kicking them out. So I think I started hitting a roadblock because like art was almost like not fun anymore, because I was just doing it to do it and move on to the next thing. So I felt like I'd hit that roadblock. I felt like I wasn't happy with my art anymore. And I was trying to figure out why. So I think the first thing to do sometimes is take a step back and like live things, not put that pressure on yourself. Sometimes what you need to do is to learn again. I spent so many years without taking a class or reading a book about drawing. And so when I hit this roadblock this year, I started reading again in the morning. I would start my day off with this book on gesture drawings, and I'd pull it up and I just read a few pages, and it was like relearning again and also seeing art from a different perspective. And then I'd do some sketch like warm-ups based on what I had just read, and then I'd start my day. I think starting the day with that is super helpful because it, first of all, you're not kind of like stuck in your own mind of like how you're used to doing things. It really is exercising your creativity. So I think like, first of all, definitely like get back to learning, or get back to like watching or reading a piece of media or entertainment or like comic or something that was inspiring to you in the first place. Second, I found out this year that creating in a different way helps with my roadblock. I think that's what happened the first time when I started doing stuff traditionally again, the ink and different subject matter, and the watercolor and gouache. And this year, what I started to do was working on wood carving, because for my, which I'll talk, I guess, like when ask what I've been working on, which is Mori Vivi, which is the graphic novel that I'm working on. The main character wood carves, and it started off as like a research, like a way of researching what's wood carving like, you know, would he, you know, like, would he be able to do this? Would he be able to do that? Like, you know, could you get cut when you're doing this? Like, I just wanted to get a feel for it so I could better inform him in the story. And then I fell in love with it. And to be able to create something just for the sake of creating it, again, it was that feeling again, like I captured that feeling again, and it felt fun again to create. And so as I was working on creating my first sculpture and getting that joy out of it again, I felt like I could almost like loosen up with my drawing, and like it almost inspired me to get back to drawing again and doing stuff for me. Sometimes roadblock is also like, for me, it's almost like my mind's trying to step up, or like my art is trying to level up, but I don't quite know how. And sometimes like a change in medium helps with that. I found out this year that I like working in Procreate on iPad better than I do on Photoshop. And so I've been, unfortunately, I have books that I started in Photoshop, so I have to finish them on Photoshop. But I made the resolve of like, okay, well, this is just, it's almost like I was afraid of like shifting into this new style. So I was holding myself back. And so like once I let that go and talked to my agent and said, listen, like, I want to start making art more in this way. And we agreed, okay, like, so now let's try to like make your portfolio kind of lean this way more so people can see that. And I'm going to make my graphic novel in this new way. It felt very liberating because I wasn't holding myself back anymore in how I felt. So it is like, sometimes roadblocks just require exploration and like allowing yourself to explore. If you're too hard on yourself and to like, no, but I gotta get better now, and like I gotta do this now, and like it's almost like you're just trying to like squeeze something out of something that doesn't have any juice. And so like if you can't allow yourself to kind of like let go and let loose and just be so like kind to yourself in those moments, then it's going to be harder to get past those.
And we also have some questions submitted by local Glendale teens.
Sure.
The first question is, how do you hope your readers feel when they see your illustration?
I hope that they see joy. I enjoy putting in a lot of like animated expressions into my characters. I hope that they feel connected to those expressions and those emotions. I hope they see themselves, because I am really adamant about showing diversity, not only diversity in my characters, like, but even like more so, let's say like in the Latina community, the diversity in the Latina community, and like, and how different we all look and how amazing it is that we all look so different. And so it's really, I take a lot of pleasure in showing that in my illustrations. So I hope they see themselves. I hope it inspires them to create too, if they love to draw, you know, like I mean, I think about the drawings I saw growing up, or like the movies I saw growing up that inspired me to draw. And I hope that I can do that for somebody too.
In your comic Hiking, published on your website, you talk about how we should hike with friends who are willing to die with us. Does this come from experience?
I guess so. That's so funny that you brought that up. I love it. Yeah, I guess that's like I guess that would be a metaphor. That really happened. That's my current boyfriend back then, just my friend. This sense of just kind of like leading the way. In a way, it kind of connects to the way my friend Gladys helped me, because she really kind of like led the path for me to like get to where I am today. So I'd say so, yeah.
Some of your art and illustrations seem to be based off on your love for the Latina community. How do you think we can spread awareness about different cultures?
By creating from those different cultures, just, create what you represent and like what means a lot to you. For me, my culture means a lot to me. And so I've been able to spread awareness by just drawing about my culture. A lot of people have like asked me, like, have learned what vejigantes are. Not only, for me, that's really cool that a lot of people get to know that aspect of Puerto Rican culture through that. The food as well. I had a comic on para make tostones that like got really popular, and a lot of people, it's funny to see like a lot of people had a lot of things to say because everybody makes it differently in their own country. So for me, that was awesome that everybody kind of could connect on that. And for me, that's also spreading awareness, right? Because like I didn't know that like this person made tostones this way and I made them that way. What else? Like the pasteles Christmas one, and I have like so many more like ideas on kind of like drawing scenes and things that happen within our culture and on the islands. And that's my way of spreading awareness, like that's my way of saying this is our culture. So yeah, create what you want people to see.
What is your favorite form of art? Painting, digital drawing, pencil sketches, watercolor?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. I guess digital is just the most accessible, I'd say. But out of all the traditional methods, I think painting. I love to draw, I really do, but there's just something about painting because like that's it, your drawing's done. Now you just get to paint, and there's something so liberating about just like losing yourself in the colors, and layering that, and being a little messy with it. I'm a little messy when I paint, and I love it. Like I'm not the precise, like I'm just almost like very sketchy with the way I paint. So like which is very different from like the way I do my digital drawings, which is kind of like basic colors. But I don't know, there's just something so like liberating about just kind of going at it and just letting my hand go free. So I'd say painting.
What is something you're excited about for your new graphic novel?
I'm excited about people getting to know Angel, my protagonist, and this kind of supernatural world or kind of like mythology or story that's in all of this. I'm excited to be able to put onto a world of story that takes place in the mountains of Puerto Rico. I haven't seen that often. I think I've seen a lot of stories take place about Puerto Ricans in the States. I've seen even stories about that take place in like the cities in Puerto Rico, in San Juan especially, but I don't often see the mountainside of Puerto Rico be represented. And that's the closest to me because that's where my mom's family's from. That's where I lived a few years when I was little. I lived a few years when I was in high school. And it's always so close to my heart. And I'm excited to introduce people to the mountainside of Puerto Rico. And I'm excited to also kind of incorporate the mannerisms of people over there. Just we use our hands a lot when we talk and we make a lot of expressions like this. And I'm really excited to draw that and to kind of like put that in there. So just for people to kind of immerse themselves in this world and in this side of that little island.
So before we end, we have some rapid fire questions. The first question is, what is your favorite color?
Yellow.
What is something you have been proud to say you have accomplished?
I am proud to have been able to sell my graphic novel to a publishing company.
If you could have 3 people dead or alive for dinner, who would it be?
I would say my abuela, my younger self. It's gonna sound really lame, but like my dog who passed away. I'm thinking of people who I'd really want to be with right now. And I think those are the 3. I don't know. I'm feeling like comforting type of like nostalgic.
What is a book that you have recently read or are currently reading that you would recommend?
I read a little bit back, but like I was looking at it again. I have it here because I was looking through it again. Called The Magic Fish. It's like a YA graphic novel. It's about Vietnamese like boy and his mom. And he's trying to figure out a way to tell her that he's gay, but you know, she's the language she speaks the most is Vietnamese, and he just doesn't quite know how to say it. So like they have this connection through this Cinderella story that she's telling him. I'm sorry, not a Cinderella story. So like it's Cinderella's story comes after, but there's this like story this fairy tale that she's telling him, and so it's kind of like his way to connect with her as he's trying to navigate like this gap between them, and then kind of like going through her own like gap with her home country as well. So I really recommend. It's really beautiful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa. We learned a lot about you. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to sit down with us and talk. Can you let everyone at home know about any upcoming projects and where they could connect with you?
Sure. My upcoming graphic novel, Morivivi, is currently work in progress. I'm working on the script right now. Slated to be published in 2023, but you can follow me for updates on that, and you can follow me on Instagram at Vanessa Flores Art, and my website is vanessafloresart.com, and there you can see my art, and you can contact me there if anybody wants to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
you.
We really appreciate
You're welcome.
it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
Thank
we
you.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.